Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining another session of Surgipedia's clinical case discussions. Presenting the case for today would be Shumedha Ghosh, who is one of our subscribers. I'd like to invite Shumedha to take over right now and begin her presentation on today's discussion.
Okay, so my case is a 65-year-old gentleman who presented with yellowish discoloration of the skin, the eyes and the urine since the last 15 days. He also complains of itching all over the body, and his jaundice is associated with loss of appetite and nausea since about the same duration, 1 to 2 months. And he also has weight loss for about 1 to 2 months, and there is no associated pain abdomen. He also complains of a fullness of the abdomen after meals, and he has no bloody vomiting or bloody stools, and he has no other systemic symptoms. On local examination, we find that there is a on general survey, we see that there is a pallor present, the nutrition is poor, the patient is also deeply jaundiced, and on local examination, we see that there is a lump present in the upper right hypochondriac region, which is extending somewhat up to the lumbar and the epigastric region, and it is non-tender. It seems to be the palpable gallbladder, and all of the systemic examinations are normal. So this is that is my summary.
Hi Sumedha. So based on your findings, what is the most probable diagnosis?
According to my findings, my probable diagnosis is that it is a case of obstructive jaundice, probably due to periampullary carcinoma.
Okay. And why do you think so?
Because the patient is an elderly man of 65 years, and he complains of gradual deepening, progressive jaundice and itching all over the body. He is also cachectic and has significant weight loss over the last 2 months. He complains of anorexia and fullness after meals, and he has been an alcoholic for the last 40 years.
Right. So what can be the differential diagnosis for this case?
The differential diagnosis can be carcinoma gallbladder, then cholangiocarcinoma, and then choledocholithiasis. It can be metastatic lymphoma, tuberculosis, uh, with a lymph node mass which is into the porta hepatis. Then biliary strictures and sclerosing cholangitis.
Okay. So what would you now like to do with the patient?
We would suggest the patient to go for further investigations like an LFT and routine investigations like blood and urine, and also for an USG of the hepatobiliary tree.
What findings would you expect in LFT?
In an LFT, the patient would have raised alkaline phosphatase, and serum AST/ALT may be raised. Also, conjugated hyperbilirubemia will be found.
Right. So definitely the total bilirubin is to be raised because the patient is a patient of jaundice, and in the total the conjugated fraction should be higher because it is a case of obstructive jaundice, right? So among like AST, ALT, and ALP, that is alkaline phosphatase, which rise do you expect to be more in case of obstructive jaundice?
ALP, alkaline phosphatase.
Right. So that is a hint that this is a case of obstructive jaundice just from the blood picture. So after we perform an USG, suppose we find that there is an obstruction near the maybe the end part of the CBD or near the ampulla of Vetter, somewhat like that, but it is not being delineated properly on USG because those regions are retroperitoneal, right? So they can be obscured by bowel gas shadows and other structures. So what definitive radiological investigation should help you in diagnosing this case?
We should perform a contrast enhanced CT scan. Uh,
Do you want to add anything to that?
uh, we can do an ERCP or MRCP to
No, I have,
delineate the
like
structure
you
better.
said that you are going to perform a contrast enhanced CT scan. I asked
Okay.
you whether you want to add any description or any special term to this investigation for this case. Are you, when you are prescribing an investigation to this patient in the future, are you just going to write CCT abdomen or you are going to mention something else?
Of the pancreatic region.
Yeah, the actual investigation for this case is going to be a triphasic CT scan. So we have these three phases in CT scan. Okay, do you know the phases
Uh,
in triphasic?
Vaguely, like there is um, the pre arterial phase, the arterial phase, and the portal or venous phase.
Total venous phase. So this is going to be a triphasic CT scan with pancreatic protocol. So this is the full thing that you should uh, prescribe this patient. The investigation for cases of obstructive jaundice in which you are suspecting a periampullary maybe growth or something, then the actual investigation, the full term that you should say is actually a triphasic CT scan with pancreatic protocol. And as you said, you should know the phases. So the phases are the non-contrast phase, that is the pre-contrast when you have not injected any contrast. The next phase is the arterial phase, where you are going to see the enhancement of regions which are vascular, because that is the parts which are supplied by the arteries, and the artery is now carrying the contrast. And the next is the portal venous phase, where the contrast is getting washed out. So that is why we have three phases, and that is why this is known as a triphasic CCT scan. And pancreatic protocol means that we are going to take 1 to 3 mm, that is very fine slices near the pancreatic region, to delineate the anatomy more, that is properly or in a better fashion. Okay, so you have diagnosed the case via triphasic CCT scan with pancreatic protocol as a case of carcinoma head of the pancreas. Okay, so what else do you think could be the diagnosis if we say that this is a case of periampullary carcinoma? What consists periampullary carcinoma? What do you mean by periampullary carcinoma?
Periampullary carcinoma basically consists of 4 types of cancer. That is, first would be cancer in the that is within 2 centimeters of the ampulla of Vater. So first would be ampullary cancer from the ampulla of Vater. Second is carcinoma head of the pancreas. Third is distal bile duct carcinoma, and uh, the last one is duodenal carcinoma.
Yeah, near the ampullary region. So all of them are going to obstruct the distal CBD, and that is going to lead to this obstructive jaundice, right? Uh, what is waxing and waning type of jaundice?
Waxing and waning type of jaundice is when the jaundice it increases and then again it decreases. It is basically uh, due to a cancer mass which which when it is growing it causes increasing jaundice, but then when it due to its friability it slows off, then there is again patency of the duct and there is waning of the jaundice.
Right. So we have a mass which is obstructing the CBD, and at one point there is a central necrosis occurring in the mass, which causes the mass to slough off, and then again the duct, as I said, becomes patent, and then there is a relief of jaundice, again followed by jaundice when the cancer or the tumor is growing again. Right. Can you name one tumor marker for pancreatic carcinoma?
CA19-9.
Right. Okay. So after you have diagnosed the case to be a case of carcinoma head of the pancreas, you would like to carry out some other investigations, those typical pre-op investigations, right? what other important point should you assess before you move on to the management?
We should, sir. What are you asking? Like,
I'm asking that when you are going to plan for the management, you have diagnosed the case as CNS
exactly.
of the pancreas, right? Now you would like to manage the patient. So before moving on to the management or the type of management, what should guide you or what should help you in planning your management?
Okay. First of all, we should see the whether the patient is fit for operation or not, and then we look for the resectability of the cancer, how much it has spread, and if there are metastasis present or not, if the patient has any other comorbid conditions.
Right. So the main important things are the resectability and the metastasis. Metastasis is applicable for any tumor. So this you already know that in TNM classification we write M1, which is distant mets, and in patients with M1, whatever be the T stage, whatever be the end stage, we do not operate. Right. In case of pancreas also, metastasis is one very important thing, but the other important thing is the resectability. So, a resectable tumor, do you know what a resectable tumor is? Can you just mention maybe one or two points in which you can say that the tumor is resectable or not?
So in general or in for pancreatic
For
cancer?
pancreatic cancer.
Okay. So whether the tumor has spread to organs like the liver or not, and whether there is a superior mesenteric vein encasement, um, then I know this too.
Yeah, basically in the vessels we pay attention to two vessels. One is the superior mesenteric vein, and the other is the portal vein. So if they are not involved, and there is this preserved fat plane between the tumor and the superior mesenteric artery and the celiac trunk, that means that the celiac trunk and the superior mesenteric artery, they have not been encroached by the tumor. Then we say that the tumor is resectable. Otherwise, if they have been involved along with the tumor, then we say that it is not resectable. So, suppose this tumor is resectable, but you have this patient in this condition. Are you going to do anything before the operation, or you're just going to proceed directly to the surgery?
First, we should do some pre-operative things for the patient, like we have to correct his anemia, then we have to correct his nutritional status by total parenteral nutrition. Patients presenting with obstructive jaundice are most often they have decreased glycogen reserves, so we have to give him glucose for that. Then we have to check for his renal status, and if it is deranged, then we have to give him IV furosemide or mannitol. Mm. We also have to take care of his jaundice, uh, which we may do by ERCP. uh,
What would you like to do via ERCP?
Stenting.
Would you like to go for a ERCP stenting in a patient who is like going for operation?
No, generally it is not done because it can lead to infections like cholangitis. But if the jaundice is particularly severe, then we should do that.
Yeah, where do we actually perform this ERCP stenting to relieve the jaundice? In which cases?
Mostly in palliative cases where we cannot resect it.
Right.
So
And any,
not in this case.
yeah, any other pre-op preparation that you would like to carry out? You have mentioned about anemia correction. You have mentioned about carbohydrate and glycogen stored correction. You have mentioned about renal function. Uh, any other thing? One important point that you are missing out here. We have obstructive jaundice, and we are going to carry out a procedure. So, what can happen and what needs to be corrected? What are the pre-op investigations that we carry out? What are the important like blood tests that have to be there before a patient enters into the OT?
Okay, we have to correct his platelet count. Sorry, we have to correct his prothrombin time by giving him vitamin K or fresh frozen plasma.
Right. What is the dose of vitamin K and how many days is it given usually?
Vitamin K deep intramuscularly 10 milligram for 5 to 7 days.
Right. And we can also administer FFP to correct PT. So why do you think there can be a derangement in prothrombin time?
Because ultimately the obstruction leads to hepatic dysfunction, and the clotting factors are produced in the liver. So
Right.
prothrombin time will be deranged.
What clotting factors is the liver dependent clotting factors? Do you know what clotting factors are like dependent on the liver for synthesis?
2, 7, 9, 10.
Right. So you have corrected everything for this patient pre-operatively. This is also a very important short note, mind it. So this can be asked in the theory also, pre-operative preparation in a jaundice patient. So after correction, we proceed for the surgery. So what surgery would you like to carry out in a case of C head of the pancreas, which is resectable, of course?
We can carry out a pylorus preserving pancreaticoduodenectomy or pylorus preserving Whipple's procedure.
What is the pylorus preserving pancreatic duodenectomy also known as?
A Longmire traverso procedure.
Right. And in Whipple's, we do not preserve the pylorus, right? So what structure do we remove in Whipple's surgery?
We remove distal 40 to 50% of the stomach, then duodenum up to about proximal 10 centimeter of the jejunum, the gallbladder, the head and the uncinate process of the pancreas, then the distal portion of the bile duct.
And we are operating for carcinoma, so we need to remove some other structures also. This is
Okay,
applicable.
periduodenal, peripancreatic, and um, lymph nodes, also
Right.
the around the CBD.
It is a pericholedocal. Right. So, in this case, we are removing the distal 40 to 50% of stomach in Whipple's, but in PPPD, we are not removing that to sort of have a better physiology and a better function. Okay, so after you have removed these structures in Whipple's operation, how would you maintain the continuity?
We maintain the continuity by doing um, a Roux-en-Y pancreaticojejunostomy, then hepaticojejunostomy, and a gastrojejunostomy or duodenojejunostomy.
Okay. Uh, so after that, would you like to carry out any adjuvant therapy?
Adjuvant therapy.
It can be carried out, it may not be carried out, it depends on from case to case.
Gastrectomy may be carried out if the patient shows signs of like gastric outlet obstruction.
No, I am talking about adjuvant therapy like radiotherapy or chemotherapy. So the role is limited, but sometimes we may carry out, sometimes we may not. But it is to be administered to patients in which we could not carry out the operation, the surgery. So now let's move on to non-resectable patients. So in non-resectable patients, how are you going to manage them? Suppose you found out that the mass is not resectable or it has spread to the maybe the liver or somewhere else. So in those cases also, you can't just leave the patient alone and let him suffer, right? So you have to do something. So what are the steps that you can take to manage a inoperable case?
We go for palliative treatment like reduction of the jaundice that we can do by ERCP procedure, and we need to reduce his pruritus, and in case he develops gastric outlet obstruction in the later stages, we carry out a gastrojejunostomy, and we can also carry out palliative chemotherapy.
Okay, and this patient is going to complain of a lot of pain. So
Yeah, we do celiac plexus blockade with alcohol.
right. We may provide him with opioid at first. If it's not controlled, then we can carry out a celiac plexus block either with alcohol or with local anesthetic agents. Okay, and in adjuvant chemo, can you name some like agents which are used?
5-fluorouracil plus cisplatin, gemcitabine.
Yes, gemcitabine alone can be used. It is an oral preparation. Or we can use 5-FU, we can use methotrexate or cyclophosphamide. Okay. What palliative surgery can we carry out in a patient uh, who is not fit for like people's?
ERCP stenting procedure.
That is for like relieving the jaundice, but I'm talking about not ERCP, like a, a formal surgery.
Oh, gastrojejunostomy.
That is for uh, gastric outlet obstruction. Bypass, any bypass procedure? There is something known as the triple bypass surgery, which we may carry out to like leave the mass as it is, but like establish the continuity. So the principle is same as that of the Whipple. Suppose you have not removed the mass, but you are like trying to establish the continuity to relieve the jaundice and provide some sort of palliation. So triple bypass means that it consists of three things. So they are going to be a hepaticojejunostomy, that is a Roux-en-Y hepaticojejunostomy. It's going to be a gastrojejunostomy and a pancreaticojejunostomy. So we bypass the region of the like distal CBD where it's draining into the duodenum and causing obstruction, and the head of the pancreas encroaching on that. So we bypass that part and we carry out these three like anastomosis, and that is why it is known as triple bypass. So it is a hepaticojejunostomy, so liver joined with jejunum. So we relieve the obstruction near the like draining the gallbladder draining into the CBD and CBD draining into the ampulla of bladder. So that is relief. That is by hepaticojejunostomy. Then gastrojejunostomy. So we bypass the duodenum, so the stomach directly connected to the jejunum, and pancreaticojejunostomy. So the remaining portion of the pancreas drains the juice into the jejunum directly without going through the region of the duodenum. Okay, so uh, in your history, that is in your case, what were the features that pointed out to a malignant cause rather than a benign cause that you mentioned in the differentials?
The patient complains of fullness after his meals, so the mass is gradually growing, and he's also complaining of loss of appetite, and he's cachectic also. He's been losing weight since the last 2 months, and his jaundice is progressively deepening.
And
Um,
were there any risk factors?
Alcohol for the last 40 years.
Right, so that is going to be risk factor for this case. But like, don't
He's also elderly,
yeah.
like
So
65
don't
years.
run after these things. The patient may not be alcoholic, also still may develop carcinoma of the pancreas. So you don't need to make a non-alcoholic patient alcoholic just to prove your diagnosis. So be careful about this part. What is Truchot's sign?
Truzius sign is migratory thrombophlebitis in cases of some abdominal malignancies.
Right. And what is Trocheus sign?
Troisius sign is a enlargement of the left supraclavicular lymph node in cases of gastric malignancy or pancreatic malignancy.
Right. So we would now take a look at the like case sheet so that everyone gets an idea of how to write a long case in the exam. After that, we would go back to some questions and doubt clearing session. Uh, okay, so we begin with patient particulars as always. Next, we move on to chief complaints. This part should be clear to all of you by now. So in chief complaint, we write it according to the timeline. That is the yellowish discoloration of the skin, eyes, and urine were since the last 15 days, and the itching. Uh, appeared since the last 7 days. So that is the point number 2. And the first one is the point number 1, that is 15 days. So we write it according to the chronology. Next, we move on to history of present illness, which is nothing but the elaboration of the chief complaint. And here you should highlight on the yellowish discoloration, you should highlight on the like icterus, and you should highlight on any associated findings. You should highlight any maybe risk factors, important risk factors. You can mention it here also in history of present illness, or you may mention it separately in addiction. It doesn't matter that much. So next is past history. So in past history, we have this is also an important indicator, that is patient was admitted in hospital on 20 years back with a possible attack. We don't have any documents. It's all that the patient is saying. So with a possible attack of alcoholic gastritis. So we know that we are dealing with a chronic alcoholic patient, and he's been consuming alcohol for the last 40 years. So definitely we should suspect a cancerous cause to this obstructive jaundice rather than a benign cause like cholelithiasis. Next, we move on to some personal history. Bladder, bowel, sleep is normal in this case. Appetite is decreased. So that is also an indicator for a malignancy. Addiction is very important in this case. The patient is addicted to alcohol. If possible, you can write about the amount, but it's not mandatory. If the patient cannot tell you the amount of alcohol that he or she has been consuming, then there's no need to panic about that, or make it up or something. Next, we move on to family history, not quite important in this case. Drug history, allergy history, these are typical things that you need to write. Treatment history, the patient either has not received any treatment for his condition, or in a lot of cases, the patients are not aware of the treatment that they're receiving. In physical examination, in general survey, the mental status is important in these cases because elderly patients with malignancy, they can have encephalopathy, they can have some other like mental problems. So mental state is important. In this case, the patient is conscious, alert, and cooperative. The build is average, or it can be poor also. In patients with malignancy, the nutrition, as she has written, is cachectic. Pallor is present. Icterus, of course, is present. This is the case of obstructive jaundice. So we should definitely write about these points. And the other parts like cyanosis, clubbing, edema is absent in this case. Neck bends, neck nodes are not enlarged. Then we move on to the vitals. After that, we move on to the local examination of the abdomen. So in local examination, we begin with inspection. In inspection, the shape of the abdomen in severely cachectic patients, it can be scaphoid, but in a lot of times it can be normal also. So if it's normal, you can write it as as ovoid or globular or something, or you can just write it as normal. Next is palpation. We go for a superficial palpation and then move on to deep palpation. In superficial, we test the temperature. So we compare the two sides of the abdomen for the temperature and the superficial tenderness. Next, we move on to palpation of the organs for organomegaly. So in this case, she has written that a lump is palpable in the right hypochondriac region, extending to the epigastric and right lumbar region. So in this case, it can be the palpable gallbladder, but in a lot of cases, you may not find any palpable organ in the abdomen also. So be careful about it, that it doesn't mean that a patient of obstructive jaundice is going to present with a palpable mass in the abdomen. So nothing is absolute, nothing is 100%. You may get a finding like this, you may not get it. If you do not get it, please don't add it to your history, because the examiner might check whether the patient has any palpable gallbladder or not. And if he or she doesn't have, then it's going to be discredited for you. So whatever findings that you will get, please stick to that for the history and physical examination. Next, we move on to the percussion, and there is no free fluid in the abdomen. There is no ascites in this case. So the percussion finding is normal. The auscultation finding is also normal. And of course, as she has mentioned, you have to write about colorectal examination. And in most cases in the exam, you are not you do not do it. So you have to write that colorectal examination has not been done. Next, we move on to systemic examination. So respiratory system, cardiovascular system, nervous system, you should examine all of them. And in a lot of cases, these things are normal. And in a lot of times, examiners don't move up till this point because they don't have so much of time. But nonetheless, you should definitely mention the examination of these systems in your answer sheet to make it a complete one. Last, we move on to the case summary. So as she has presented the case, we know that this is a 65-year-old gentleman presenting with like features of jaundice and anorexia, and there you should mention some positive, like some relevant negative history also, like there is no history of vomiting or bloody stool, because that may point out to some other diagnosis. There is no pain abdomen, so this is a painless progressive sort of jaundice. So more like probable of becoming periampullary carcinoma. Next, you should mention about the examination findings in the summary, the positive findings, and a few relevant negative findings as well. And last, you should write about the provisional diagnosis. So this is a case of obstructive jaundice, probably due to periampullary carcinoma. Next, you may mention the investigation suggested. You may mention the differential diagnosis. These things differ from college to college. It's up to you. So in investigation, of course, we should carry out some baseline investigations, some preoperative investigations, and the definitive investigations, as she has mentioned, like LFT, because this is a case of jaundice, and USG, upper abdomen most commonly, and the relevant investigation and the proper investigation is triphasic CCT with pancreatic protocol. So this is the case sheet as it should look in your exam. So I think you got an idea and you can write it out yourself. Okay, so this is more or less how you are going to present a case of obstructive jaundice. It is not possible clinically to differentiate the different, causes of periampullary carcinoma, like distal common, like distal CBD, or whether it is the head of the pancreas, or whether it is carcinoma in the duodenum near the region of the ampulla beta. So it's not possible clinically to differentiate that. So in provisional diagnosis, you should mention that it's a case of periampullary carcinoma. And if the examiner is like too much critical about it, then there are some points, like if the patient is presenting with maybe deep jaundice at presentation and weight loss and like history of alcoholism and all. Most commonly, it is carcinoma head of the pancreas, but I don't recommend like jumping into conclusions like that, because in our actual clinical practice, we are not able to delineate a case of obstructive jaundice, whether it's carcinoma of the pancreas or other causes. But yes, whether it's due to a benign cause like cholelocholithiasis, whether it's due to like cholangitis. So in cholangitis, it's an inflammation. So we are going to have features of cholangitis. We are going to have features of fever. Okay, pain may be occasional. So in malignancy, we have painless progressive jaundice, and if it's choledocholithiasis, then Courvoisier's law uh, can be applicable, but sometimes it's an exception also. So okay, so what is Courvoisier's law?
Uh,
Like,
uh, Courvoisier's law states that if the gallbladder is palpable in a case of obstructive jaundice, then it is most probably not due to any stones.
why?
Because in case of any gallstone, the gallbladder is already in a chronic inflammatory state and it is shriveled up.
Right. Are there any exceptions to this law?
Double impaction of stone, that is one in the neck and the other in the CBT, then mucocele of the gallbladder, empyema of the gallbladder, multiple small stones.
So what is going to happen in double impaction of stone? Why is it going to be an exception?
Because whenever there is an obstruction, the part proximal to that is dilated. So in this case, the gallbladder will be dilated.
Because there is a stone at the neck or near the cystic duct, right? So the gallbladder is going to be distended, and there is a stone in the CBD, but it is also causing distension of gallbladder because there is a stone in the cystic duct as well, right? And if it's a primary CBD stone also, then also the gallbladder will not be shriveled up because the stone has not developed in the gallbladder and the gallbladder has not been chronically inflamed. So that is also an exception to this Courvoisier's law. So nothing is absolute. So you also have exceptions to Cavouet's law. And another thing that I want to highlight is that there may be like no palpable gallbladder in a case of CA pancreas or periampullary carcinoma also, because in about 30 to 40% cases we get that palpable gallbladder, but in a lot of cases we do not get it. So please keep this in mind that you may not have a palpable gallbladder despite having a patient of obstructive jaundice due to uh, periampullary carcinoma. So this is how you should present a case of obstructive jaundice. Nothing else, not much to discuss about this case. It's a very important case because it's quite common in clinical practice. A lot of patients present to the surgery OPD with deep jaundice, which turns out to be obstructive jaundice due to periampullary carcinoma. The main important part here, as we have discussed, is the resectability. So what determines the resectability? So she has answered that correctly. And the like management according to resectability. So you may carry out a Whipple's procedure. You may carry out a PPPD. Okay, that is a pylorus preserving pancreatic duodenectomy. And if it's not resectable, you may carry out palliation. Palliation can be palliation of the jaundice, that can be via ERCP stenting. It can be also done by a triple bypass procedure, as we have discussed, and also palliation of pain with NSAIDs, with opioids, and with celiac plexus block by local anesthetics like bupivacaine or absolute alcohol, and also palliation, that is generalized improvement of the patient's lifestyle. And you may administer chemotherapy with 5-FU, with cyclophosphamide, or with oral gemcitabine. So we move on to question answer session. So if you have any question, you may ask or you may type in the.
So I have some questions. This patient, the one in the history sheet, he's not presenting with pale stools. So is that not an integral part of obstructive jaundice?
No, in a lot of cases, there can be like some part of the bile flowing through the GI tract. So it's not that. So you see, I have already mentioned that nothing is absolute. So even if the patient is saying that the color of his stool is yellow, you cannot make it white just because you want to prove obstructive jaundice. So there may be like some part of the bile flowing through the CBD, draining into the duodenum and causing the biliverdin, bilirubin, all the bile pigments to reach into the gut and causing the color of the stool. That is one thing. The second thing is that a lot of times the history may not be absolutely accurate. So I have deliberately mentioned it in this case that the stool is yellow because I have faced a lot of patients who have never complained of any steatorrhea or any white colored urine, white colored stool. So it happens in real clinical scenario. So in the books, maybe they are going after pale clay colored stool. In theory, also you should write that definitely. But in clinical practice, you may encounter patients who are not complaining of anything like that. And if you ask whether the stool is floating in the pan just to elicit, steatorrhea and stuff like that, a lot of times patients don't understand those things and they'll say that yes, it's floating or it's not floating. So it's not that accurate. So definitely if you have a positive finding, mention it. But if you don't have, don't panic that this is not obstructive jaundice. If you have the other features, it is definitely obstructive jaundice.
Sir, and then you mentioned that triple bypass surgery for palliation, but it is almost the same as Whipple's. So what are we doing different there?
We are not removing anything. In
Okay.
Whipple's, we are removing those distal part of stomach. We are removing the main mass. That is the main important part. We are removing the head and neck of the pancreas along with the mass. If the mass is not resectable, if it is encroaching on the supramesenteric vein, if it's encroaching on the supramesenteric artery, then removing that is going to be disastrous. So in triple bypass, we are not touching anything. So we are letting it as it is, but we are performing some bypass procedures so that we can literally bypass that mass and we can sort of carry out continuity in the GI tract. So the stomach is going to drain directly into the jejunum instead of the duodenum and causing obstruction. So the liver is going to directly drain into the jejunum instead of the hepatic duct and then into the duodenum. And the pancreas is also directly going to drain into the jejunum rather than into the duodenum. So we are basically bypassing that region of the ciliate of the pancreas, and we are establishing the continuity. But the continuity is like that of the Whipples. After we have removed everything in Whipples, just as we establish the continuity, I have described it with a diagram in the video of pancreas also. So if you have gone through that, you are going to understand it very easily. So the basic principle here is the same, but we are not touching anything. We are not doing anything. This is just palliative. Okay. So instead of ERCP stenting, in ERCP stenting, what's going to happen? We are just relieving the jaundice. But if the patient develops gastrococcal obstruction at a later stage, then we again have to carry out a gastrojejunostomy, right? Anyway, so if we carry out triple bypass, then we are sort of safe from the future complications. But yeah, the prognosis of this C-head of the pancreas is very poor. Even with resectable disease, the mortality rate of the Whipple's operation is also high. So a lot of patients expire a few days after the OT due to sepsis, maybe due to some respiratory insufficiency, because it's a very time-consuming surgery, right? So the mortality rate is very high, even with treatment, even without treatment. So it's quite a grim prognosis, just like CA gallbladder also. Do you have any other questions?
One more. So, in which phase of the triple phase CCT do we see the cancer?
It depends on the type of like pancreatic cancer. The adeno, the cystic neoplasms, they usually enhance in during the arterial phase. Okay, but these adenocarcinoma, they are usually better delineated in the pre-contrast phase. But if they're vascular, they may also be delineated in the arterial phase. So it depends on the type of carcinoma, whether it's adenocarcinoma, ductal adenocarcinoma, that is, which is usually more common, whether it's mucinous cystadenocarcinoma of the pancreas, whether it's like there are a lot of types of pancreatic cancers, right? So how we are going to determine it in CCT depends on the type of carcinoma. Okay, so thank you, Shumedha, for presenting today's case. We really appreciate that you have come forward and presented yet another case. So I encourage our subscribers to like present cases themselves so that you are more confident during the final exam. So if you have anyone else, if you have any other question, you may type it in the chat box. So we would wait for 5 to 10 minutes. And if you have any questions, please type it in the chat box. Okay. So we have some questions already. Why double impaction of stone is exception to Courvoisier's law? Okay. So for realizing or understanding this fact, first you have to know what this Courvoisier's law is about. This Courvoisier's law states that if in a case of obstructive jaundice, we are getting a palpable gallbladder, it is not due to stones. So what is Courvoisier basically wanting to say? He is saying that if the like obstructive jaundice is due to stones, then the gallbladder, because the in a lot of cases the stone, the primary the development of stone happens in the gallbladder, and that stone migrates into the CVD, causing choledocholithiasis leading to obstructive jaundice. So if the stone had originated in the gallbladder, it just doesn't originate and move into the CVD. It takes some time. So the time in which it is inside the gallbladder is going to be chronically, inflamed, and it is going to be fibrosed, and it is going to be contracted. So even after the stone moves into the CBD, the gallbladder is never going to be distended because it is already fibrosed due to a chronic inflammatory condition. This is the gist of Courvoisier's law. Now, why is double impaction an exception? Because what is double impaction? In double impaction, we have choledocholithiasis, that is a stone in the CBD. So we think that this is a case of obstructive jaundice due to stone in CBD. So we are going to have a palpable gallbladder, but we are not having that. Why? Because we also have a stone in the neck of the gallbladder or in the cystic duct. That is just the part through which the gallbladder is draining. In this case, what happens is that the gallbladder is distending due to the bile getting obstructed inside the gallbladder itself. Okay, and that is why it is presenting a distended gallbladder. So what picture are we getting in this case? We are getting a choledocholithiasis, that is a obstructive jaundice due to stone, but we are also getting a palpable gallbladder. This is not what Courvoisier had said. Shubheshwar has said that if we have an obstructive jaundice due to stone in the CBD, the gallbladder should not be palpable. This is sort of a reverse of what he had said, right? But in this case, we are getting the gallbladder as palpable. So this is an exception. I hope it's clear to you now that why double infection of stone is an exception. The next question is, where would I be able to see the previously conducted sessions, right? So we have conducted a lot of case discussions, instrument discussions, radiology, clinical cards already. In case you have missed the live sessions, we have those links, the Google Drive links, which we are going to provide to you. Also, we are going to upload a series of these previously conducted case presentations on our YouTube channel. So if you have not subscribed or you're not following our social media pages and YouTube channel, please do follow our Facebook and Instagram page and YouTube channel as well. The name of all of them is Surgipedia. Okay. In case you have not downloaded our app, please do so. The exams are nearing, so we have our 3-month plan. We are also like having a discount at present. So if you want to subscribe and you want to go through the theory and practical videos before the exam as many times as you want, there is no limit to the watching of videos. So you may please download the app and subscribe. We also have a mock test series going on. The first mock test will be held at the end of this month in October, at the last week possibly. So for subscribers, it is absolutely free. For those who are not subscribing or who are not subscribers, we have it at a rate of 549 plus GST. So we also have a link for that for the registration. So that is also posted in our social media page on Facebook. So if you are interested in like going through a mock test that is appearing for a mock test, please, you may find the link in the Facebook page. Also, we have sent SMS to everyone regarding the links, so you may check your inbox as well. Regarding the mock tests, how can I contact for Google Drive links? You can just like email us at our email address contact@surgipedia.com. Contact at, so I'm just writing the email address here, contact@surgipedia.com. So you can just email your details here if you want to receive the Google Drive links. And we are also going to upload it on our YouTube channel as we have said. Regarding the mock tests will be theory and Viva also. Viva will be conducted in this platform as we are conducting the case presentations. So Viva would be of instruments of radiology and of cases, that is virtual cases. And theory, we would ask you to scan your answer sheets and send it over to us. We will correct it and return it back to you along with the suggestions, that is how to improve writing your answers and stuff. So we believe that it's definitely going to help you in your final MBBS examination. Any other questions? Otherwise, we are going to conclude the session.
Sir, last question.
Yeah.
How does chronic pancreatitis, I mean, why is chronic pancreatitis also a DD of this condition, like obstructive jaundice?
Chronic pancreatitis as such is not a DD, but chronic pancreatitis sometimes leads to carcinoma head of the pancreas. So a patient of chronic pancreatitis can develop carcinoma head of the pancreas, which is going to cause obstructive jaundice. Because in chronic pancreatitis, the pancreas is going to be inflamed, and usually it doesn't obstruct any biliary structure and cause jaundice.
Okay. So choledocholithiasis is a DD for obstructive jaundice.
Right.
So choledocholithiasis, it can be either due to primary stone or secondary stone.
Right.
So, but then it becomes a sort of exception to the Courvoisier's law, right? But we don't see it mentioned anywhere as exception.
What is your question? That is, whether primary CBD stone is an exception or not?
No, I mean to say choledocholithiasis is due to stones, but it leads to obstructive jaundice. So how is this not an exception to Courvoisier's law?
If this we can have choledocholithiasis, that is a stone in the CBD. It can be a primary CBD stone, that is a stone which has developed inside the CBD, or we can have a stone which has migrated from the gallbladder into the CBD. In the second case, if it's a stone which has migrated from the gallbladder into the CBD, then there was a GB stone for a long time. And in that case also, the gallbladder has been fibrosed and it's not going to be like palpable. But if it is a primary CBD stone, then the gallbladder has not been inflamed. So in case of a primary CBD stone, the even though it is choledocholithiasis, it's a primary CBD stone, and in that case also it is going to be an exception to Pavesia's law. In that case, the gallbladder is going to become palpable despite the cause being due to stones.
Thank you, sir.
If you have any other questions, you can like fill up the doubt box in our app. Or if it's like limiting the if it has a limit of characters, then you can always ping us on WhatsApp, message us on Facebook, or email us at this mentioned email address, contact@edupedia.com. If it's a non-academic doubt, our technical team or our support team is going to answer you, is going to get back to you. And if it's an academic doubt, then I will try my best to reply within 48 hours at the most. So I think no one has any other question. So we are going to conclude the session. We are going to carry out these case presentation sessions, webinars on instruments. We have a part 2 left. We had conducted part 1. So we will conduct it within maybe 2 to 3 weeks. So please stay tuned to our social media pages for the latest updates. And if you have not downloaded the app, please do so. Thank you everyone for participating in today's webinar. And thank you, Shumeda, again for presenting the case. Thank you.